Student debt has spiraled completely out of control, with $1.5 trillion worth of debt to their name, which may have been from long ago. It still sits on top of their shoulders and weighs them down. Will they be rescued? You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to look at debt. Let's begin with student debt. We are looking at an article out of Brookings, and it outlines some details from a report. And the most important line from this is that nearly 40% may default on their student loans by 2023. Think about nearly $1.5 trillion worth of student loans are out there. And if 40% default on those, think about the repercussions. Now, a lot of people don't know how this works, but any form of debt is automatically securitized. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Well, they take all the debt, each individual loan, it's a piece of paper or its digital equivalent, and they will take all of that from you and your fellow students, people down the street, people in different states, and they take it all and they package it and they put it into a nice little present right here, and they call it a security, when of course it is nothing secure at all about it. And then they sell it off to an investor. And these companies buy it up. It's a great way to make some profit. Except, of course, when one individual defaults, and then a second defaults, and maybe even the third defaults. And then you have a very big issue all down the line. We have $1.5 trillion worth. Just imagine what would happen if not even that 40% defaulted, but even, let's say, 20%. We have mass contagion that will happen in this system. Now, the government could step in. They could bail it out. They really could. But what about car loans? What about all the other debt? Credit cards, mortgages, and everything else. Are they going to bail that out as well? We'll see. They may want that crisis to have, be opportunistic, let's say. Rahm Emanuel. Okay, now we're looking at information right from the Federal Registrar. Now, they are suggesting the potential here, I won't read it for you, but the potential that people will be able to claim bankruptcy on their student loans. They want this to be able to happen. And I think that this is going to allow a lot of people, should this happen, a lot of people to claim bankruptcy. They will do it because, think about it, somebody's in, let's say, $40,000, $50,000 or more of student debt. A lot of people just can't get off of that. They'd be better off claiming bankruptcy, at least that's what they're thinking, to go that route. The U.S. Department of Education seeks to ensure that the congressional mandate to accept student loans from bankruptcy discharge, except in cases of undue hardship, is appropriately implemented, while also ensuring that borrowers from whom repayment of their student loans would be an undue hardship and not inadvertently discouraged from filing an adversary proceeding in their bankruptcy case. It goes on. But essentially, they're trying to set some rules here based on what happens with bankruptcies and student loans. I don't know which direction it's going to go, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it and keep you up to date. Some Americans' finances are on very thin ice, and I would suggest that it's more than just some. 1 in 5 Americans say that they have more credit card debt than they do in emergency savings. And that actually is surprising to me. I thought it would be a lot more than that. Another 12% said they had no credit card debt, but that they had no savings. This was only a sampling of 1,000 people, but I do believe it is relatively accurate in the fact that they don't have any savings. The average person doesn't have any savings. That's just the way it is. All right. Now, imagine for a second when we have the savings rate of near zero, whether that's 0 or anywhere between there and 5%, doesn't really matter. We're talking about numbers that are basically, historically, right near the bottom. They try to tell us about unemployment, but we know how it's skewed. We know about the temporary jobs. We know that people are taking 2 and 3 jobs, and that skews the numbers, and that people simply fall off of the equation after a year. But anyway, you have a condition that cannot be resolved simply because there is debt in every single category. Student debt, credit card, mortgage, car loans, and every other thing imaginable. Who's going to save them this time? Let's look at this. Gross output of all industries, gross output of private industries, manufacturing. So we are looking at the output of all industries, apparently, has increased to some degree. This is going back since the financial crisis. Manufacturing, as far as I'm concerned, look, it's slightly, it's almost impossible to see, but there is this slight little bit of an increase. Just a little, just a hair in manufacturing. Don't ever expect manufacturing to come back. If it does, you can be surprised. But ultimately, it's just not worth it. Federal debt, that's the orange line here. Total public debt as a percentage of the GDP. And the blue line is the federal surplus or deficit as a percent of the GDP. Now, since 2000, when everything changed, we've seen the deficits dropping lower and lower. And, of course, during the financial crisis, everything came down. But the one thing that didn't go down was quite the opposite, and that is debt. And debt as a percentage of GDP has, of course, increased quite significantly as the years have gone on. Look at the balance sheets. You know, I always laugh. I love to show this because it's really laughable. Now, we are looking at the G4 here, Fed, BOE, ECB, and the BOJ. They've all printed. They've all done a good job at using lumber and printing up as much as they can. But they've suggested to us that now is the time to taper. They're going to taper, they promise. They promised $1 trillion worth. $1 trillion worth in 2018. Can they do it? I really don't know. But we're going to see if they do. You want to know where stocks are going to go? Follow the line. Just follow this line and you'll know exactly where they'll go. They tracked this exact trajectory on the way up, and guess what? It's going to be the same on the way down. It's a fact. It's an absolute fact. Federal debt as a percentage of GDP. Just want to show you that as well. And then switching gears for just a moment. This tropical island nation that I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce, but I believe it is Seychelles, is creating a situation that I find to be unusual on multiple levels here, is to create 2 huge new marine parks in return for a large amount of its national debt to be written off. A first scheme of its kind in the world. Now, they've got some debt, but they also know that they have a very interesting coral reef area They want that to be saved. The world wants it to be rescued. And so they said, okay, well, how about we do a little deal? The novel financing engineering, effectively swapping debt for dolphins and other marine life, aims to throw a lifeline to corals, tuna, and turtles being caught in a storm of overfishing and climate change. If it works, it will also secure the economic future of the nation, which depends entirely on tourism and fishing. So, what is their debt? They have national debt. They owe it to somebody, maybe internally, maybe externally, but they're suggesting, let us wipe it off and we'll have this new marine parks. We'll help the environment. And it just makes me think, what really is this debt? Does it exist? Is it real? How can we restructure debt? How can we take something that doesn't exist, bring it into this world out of an entry in a computer, all arranged by the central banks, create it, make it happen, and then use it against different nations? It is just completely unusual to me. I've been reading about this for years and years on end, and it still doesn't sit well with me. The concept of debt, the concept of our monetary system is completely insane. It's just insane. I hope you agree with me on that. I hope you see what I'm talking about. It just seems so ridiculous. What are you wiping it off? How are you getting rid of it? Where did it come from in the first place? It's imaginary, but we're forced on it because of the way that the central bank monetary system operates. Now, that's all for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found this video informative, I know that you will find my books, The Money GPS and my newer release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. You can actually flip through these books. If you go over to Amazon, they have a look inside feature. It's going to allow you to flip through the pages of these books to see if you like them. If you're interested in the audiobook version, I have an audiobook of Global Economic Collapse, and that is available at my website, themoneygps.com. Take care.